You think you know all about the national anthem? Now you'll hear the rest of the story. Occupying Till He Comes at Southwest Prophecy Ministries.
Hello again, friends. This is Dane Rome, your announcer for today's Last Days Beacon program. Thanks for listening, and thanks for joining us. And just a reminder that these programs are supported by your gifts to this ministry. If you'd like to contribute to this ongoing faith ministry, which deals with Bible prophecy and current events, simply go to our website to contribute. Our website address is www.swpm.us. You'll find a donate link on the homepage. The website address again is www.swpm.us. Thank you for your prayers and support for this faith ministry. On today's program, Dr. Dave Schnichter will be interviewing Paul Dinger regarding his brand new article entitled The Bizarre Story of the National Anthem. This is our June Last Days Beacon article, and in this article, Paul deals with the true history of the writing of the national anthem. This history includes America's victory over Islamic terrorists in the Barbary War of 1801 to 1805. 200 years after the Islamic terrorists declared war on America, that war was renewed in 2001. The contrast between those two events will be discussed in these podcasts. So, let's join Dr. Schnichter and Paul Dinger for today's fascinating discussion.
Thank you, Dane. It is a great privilege to have Paul Dinger on the program both today and next week to discuss his brand new article entitled The Bizarre Story of the National Anthem. This article is our June edition of the Last Days Beacon. If you are not a subscriber to the Last Days Beacon or would like extra copies of this particular article, our announcer will share how to do that at the end of today's program. Paul Dinger has been a great friend to me personally and to Southwest Prophecy Ministries. We've had many stimulating conversations regarding American history, and Paul has written several great articles for us, including The Resurrection of Tyranny, History's Great Nation, History and Reality Demolish the Atheist Case Against Jesus, Nobody Knows the Meaning of the American Flag, and Separation of Church and State. By the way, you can read each of these articles by clicking on the Last Days Beacon tab of our website, which is swpm.us. Paul is a serious student of American history and a descendant of a Revolutionary War soldier. Most importantly, he is a born-again Christian who loves the Lord and loves America, which is history's great nation. Paul, welcome to the program today.
Hi, David.
Well, it's great to have you all the way from Boston, Massachusetts, one of the most historically significant countries in America. We're going to jump right into the topic, which is, of course, our June Last Days Beacon article. Why did you consider, Paul, telling the truth about the national anthem to be important in June of 2018?
Well, the modern doctrine of no censorship, of a free press, was laid by John Milton in England with a poem that he wrote called Areopagitica. Now, I'm not pronouncing it correctly, but it was a way of talking about no censorship at a time when censorship had been pretty much an institution in royalties all over the world. And Milton's idea was that truth and a lie are both powerful, but the truth is more powerful. And so if you eliminate censorship, as Ben Franklin put it, if you put truth and a lie in a ring in the public square, let's say in like a prize fight, truth will always win. And so what I'm doing here is exactly what John Milton and what America's free press is supposed to do, which is to tell the truth. And when you tell the truth, progress happens. That's, of course, been completely eliminated today with a free press, which is no longer free. It's all propaganda and lies. The national anthem is a mixture of truth and lies. The first verse about what happened at Fort McHenry didn't happen the way that it's portrayed in the lyrics of that song. And this is not my idea. This is confirmed by historians that it didn't happen that way.
So we have a narrative, a popular narrative that really doesn't line up with the actual facts. Is that what you're saying?
Right. And as I say, this is not my idea. This is something that modern historians have pointed out, that the flag that's at the Smithsonian Museum, the Star Spangled Giant flag, that was not up all night at Fort McHenry. And it wasn't put up, as the article will show, until the British ships were leaving at 9 a.m. Now, 9 a.m. is not the dawn's early light. It was put up to taunt the British sailors that were leaving the harbor.
How interesting. Well, I've been to the Smithsonian and have looked at that gigantic patched flag, which is greatly cared for and preserved. And nowhere is there any inkling of an idea that this was not the flag that was the inspiration for Key's anthem.
Well, as I point out in the article, David, the national anthem was written about the oddball version of the American flag, and that is the 15-stripe flag that was raised in 1795. And the 15-stripe flag destroys the Founding Fathers' definition of the 13 stripes as symbolizing the 13 colonies. It's never been explained why they had 15 stripes, why they made 15 stripes, but that was eliminated in 1818.
So the flag reverted to the original 13 stripes at that point in 1818?
Right, it was returned to 13 stripes in 1818.
Okay. Well, I will vouch for what you're saying. I'm looking at a picture of the banner that hangs in the Smithsonian, and indeed it has 15 stripes. I never noticed that. Well, let's move on to another little-known aspect of Francis Scott Key's writing career. Of course, we know that the Star-Spangled Banner references America's victory over Great Britain in the Battle of 1812, as it is known. But there was another aspect of Francis Scott Key's writings that occurred before that, and that has to do with another victory, a prior victory of America's forces, actually America's nascent navy, and that is America's victory in the Barbary War of 1801 to 1805. Do you think part of Key's inspiration for writing the Star-Spangled Banner came from that earlier victory?
Well, let me first say that the difference between the Barbary victory and the War of 1812 incident is night and day. The War of 1812 incident was not a victory. The English ships just left. There was no victory. The Americans did not beat the English. After they trashed Washington D.C., they just left, and they were fighting another war. So, historians know that the War of 1812 is one of the most ambiguous and inconsequential wars of American history, perhaps the most. The Barbary War, on the other hand, it was declared by the Islamic terrorists in 1801 from Libya, and the victory of the early Marines over the Muslim terrorists, pirates in the north coast of Africa, Libya, astonished the world to the point where the Pope, no fan of Protestants, issued a public proclamation congratulating America for doing what the Crusades were not able to do. The Mideast was closed after the Crusades, and the Barbary pirates were charging tribute fortunes, annual fortunes from the great powers, so that they wouldn't be attacked by these Muslim pirates. The early Marines went in and basically beat the Muslim terrorists in their front yard, completely humiliated them, and as a consequence, the Mideast was again opened. So the Barbary War got the attention of the world. The War of 1812 was it's a nothing war, but Key wrote in 1805 a poem called "When the Warrior Returns," and I believe it was Stephen Decatur, for whom Decatur, Illinois, is named. And that poem in 1805 was where the words "The Star-Spangled Banner" originated. And the emotions in that poem were sort of transferred to the incident in the War of 1812. But really, the Star-Spangled Banner emotions and sentiments apply to the victory of the Barbary War, not the non-victory in the War of 1812. And so you might say, well, why would they do that? Why would they do something so foolish? And the reason is that the ruling class, the American aristocracy, did not like the original flag and what it was saying. In other words, the original meaning of the American flag, the new constellation. And so they'd been looking for a way of directing Americans' attention away from that flag to the other flags. So it's sort of a cover-up, but it's a mixture of truth and lies. If you take the words of the first verse of the national anthem away, you have something of an American doctrine. I don't know if that's clear, but...
What are some of the tenets of that American doctrine that Key is trying to communicate?
Well, in the Revolution, and the flag became a symbol of a covenant between the Creator, mentioned 4 times throughout the Declaration of Independence, and the nation. And so the idea was, and this was a widespread belief, the idea was that the American flag was a symbol of a covenant between America's Creator and His creation, America. And it's all about supernatural stuff, the supernatural Creator, the supernatural nation. And the idea was God, country, flag. Now, that was the essence of American patriotism, which is completely gone today. So the ruling class was looking for a way to hide the true meaning of the original Stars and Stripes. Uncle Sam is another trick. The Statue of Liberty, which is a completely a European thing. Yeah. I mean, the Statue of Liberty has nothing to do with America. So that was the motivation for the Star-Spangled Banner. But just to say something about Francis Scott Key, apparently he was a very biblically knowledgeable and Bible-respecting guy. because he was the, I think, second president of the American Bible Society.
Well, that is significant to know that. And a careful reading of the Star-Spangled Banner does certainly reflect a consciousness of God. I look at the last verse when he says, "Praise the power that hath made and preserved us a nation. Then conquer we must when our cause it is just, and this be our motto, in God is our trust." Well, I can't think of a more biblical statement than that. In God is our trust, which is a central truth in the Bible.
Well, no, that's where the national motto was first proposed, and of course after World War II, Eisenhower made it the national motto, and it's on our dollar bill. But something that people don't know is that that's basically a paraphrase and a condensation of the central verse in the Bible, Psalm 118, which says, "Trust God, not man." So in other words, America is supposed to trust God, not trust, let's say, Donald Trump, and I'm not saying anything against Donald Trump, or Barack Obama, or strong armies, that it is God who has made America great, and if America is going to be made great again, it's going to be by God, and not by President Trump, as many good things as he has done.
So, what you're saying then, Paul, is that Francis Scott Key, a biblical Christian, took from Psalm 118, I believe verse 8, that talks about putting not your trust in man, but put your trust in God, and included that phrase in his the Star-Spangled Banner, and that then became the basis for "In God We Trust," which is imprinted on America's coinage.
Exactly.
Okay, that makes this a very significant national anthem in more ways than one. Now, do you think the national anthem is actually then, if we read between the lines and get into the mind of Francis Scott Key, do you think he's actually praising God for granting America victory over two world empires in our first 30 years of national existence?
Well, the national anthem, the Star-Spangled Banner, the whole thing just speaks of conspiracy, because the flag was ordered, if you read the article, by the captain, or the commander of the Fort McHenry. And it was ordered in 1813, the purpose for which, according to the Smithsonian, for which he made this flag, and it was too big a flag. I mean, it just could not have stayed up on the flagpole if it were up that night, with a storm and all the waving. And in any event, Key, when he wrote it on an envelope, and so he gets back and he shows it, I think, to his father-in-law. His father-in-law is a judge in Baltimore. Within 48 hours, his father-in-law has gotten it published in newspapers, and from there, it became a great hit. And the reason it became a great hit was because it reflected so much of what Americans believed in at that time. But if Key were to have written the first verse about the Barbary War, it would have been much more credible. But there's a lot of things about it that don't make sense. How did it become? If you're a poet or a writer, you know how hard it is to get something published. To have something published and become a hit in 48 hours suggests there's a lot of backstage maneuvering and manipulation.
As they would say in the journalism business, it was puffed. It was promoted. It became an instant hit. Well,
part of it was because it did reflect the zeitgeist of the time, and so that was one of the reasons. But beyond that, I mean, as you probably read in the article, the melody for the Star-Spangled Banner is from a British drinking song, and you just have to wonder why. And that's what accounts for the high pitch of the national anthem. which is much more appropriate after a night of drinking than it is, at a baseball game.
And of course, you can see the irony of that. It's a British drinking song celebrating the defeat of the British.
Exactly. So there's a lot of weird things, but if you read the article, this is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yes, it is. In fact, we're going to stop right there because we want to continue our discussion next week. Again, friends, we're discussing the topic of the bizarre story of the national anthem. We're talking about the rest of the story, and there are some bizarre elements. We've begun to talk about them today, but we're going to continue next week. So, Paul, thank you for joining us, and I trust that you'll be back with us next week as we continue to discuss the bizarre story of the national anthem. And now our announcer, Dane Rome, will share how you can obtain this timely article.
Thank you, Dr. Schnittger. Dear friends, every month, Southwest Prophecy Ministries produces an excellent article entitled The Last Days Beacon. These articles deal with a wide variety of subjects pertaining either to Bible prophecy or Christian liberty. Today's article is entitled The Bizarre Story of the National Anthem. We're offering a complimentary copy of this article to each one who requests it. So simply go to our website, www.swpm.us, and click on the Bookstore tab. Type Last Days Beacon in the Search tab and order your free copy of The Bizarre Story of the National Anthem. You may also order extra copies to share with family and friends. You may order 5 copies for $5, 25 copies for $15, or 100 copies for $60. When you order extra copies, you'll be automatically placed on our mailing list to receive the monthly mailing of the Last Days Beacon. Well, please join us next week for another Last Days Beacon program brought to you by Southwest Prophecy Ministries. And until then, this is Dane Rome, your announcer, saying thanks for listening.